Most of us only bake big spreads around the holidays, but in the 1800s, kitchens were entire ecosystems, which made me wonder, how did people in the 1800s do this every single day? First things first, I'm making dinner rolls. I've made bread before. I make bread kind of all the time. I made this like 2 days ago. You didn't see that. Flour, yeast, sugar, salt, warm water, butter, egg. That's a lot for some bread. Damn. When we think about baking bread, I feel like most of us probably think about the cottagecore dream, which, like, as we know, I've been down that road before. But in the 19th century, bread wasn't about aesthetics. It was fully survival. Obviously, we all know that bread was a daily staple throughout history. Still kind of is. But do you understand how utterly insane the bread lore is from Victorian times? Oh, you don't? Let me tell you. An average Victorian family of 6 consumed 55 pounds of bread per week. Bread was so important that the minimum wage was determined by the cost of bread. How am I supposed to grab this? Wow. This is my glob of bread. And this actually really surprised me. Most middle-class families didn't even make their own bread because their kitchens were too small. So instead, they got their bread from village bakeries. Except Victorians weren't just eating pure bread. White bread meant wealth. So the whiter the bread, the higher status you were. Mechanical milling made flour really cheap, so demand skyrocketed. But here's where it gets really disturbing. Most people assumed that their white, fluffy bread was made out of the finest and purest ingredients. But as early as the 1700s, bread manufacturers began adulterating flour for profit. And while technically Parliament banned additives, no one really listened. These additives included plaster, chalk, ground up bone, and alum. Alum is a derivative of aluminum and was used to add bulk to bread so that bakers could charge more, since bread was sold by weight. Alum was freely available, cheap, tasteless, and made the bread unnaturally white. However, alum led to a bunch of health issues, like bowel problems, constipation, and chronic diarrhea, which all were quite fatal to children. The adulteration of bread gradually came to an end with government action, such as the 1860 and 1899 Food Adulteration Acts in Britain. For the record, it is not lost on me that I used a stand mixer. Listen, I'm going to use what the good Lord invented to my advantage, okay? Thank you. One day I would like to try to make something and find like an old wooden stove and churn butter and shit, but today's not that day. I don't have time for that. But what I do have time for is to tell you about some pie. And for now, I'm going to make a chocolate chess pie because I have also never made one of those. Although the pie I'm about to make is going to be really good. Did you know that the first pies weren't even meant to be eaten? They were used as storage. They were hard as stone, and they called them coffins. 1, 2, 3. And I'm using that good shit. These crusts were primarily made out of flour, water, and fat, kind of like lard. Their purpose was to help food last longer on sea voyages, while also saving space. For hundreds of years, this was the only form of baking container used. That means that literally everything was a pie, if you think about it. I'm about to burn myself, and I need to make sure I'm not gonna cook the eggs with the melted butter. After the filling was eaten, the hard crust was sometimes given to servants or the poor, or even broken up and used to thicken soups. By the medieval times, pies kind of became the centerpiece of exclusive banquets, so cooks would try to outdo each other. Literally anything would be put into a pie if that meant impressing the guests. This would sometimes include live actors reciting poetry, or even a band of musicians popping out of the pie. I must be honest, for better or worse, my pies are quite normal. Settlers learn about using fruits from indigenous people, like berries and apples, which once again, thank you to the indigenous people. Eventually, coffins were replaced more with a crust because the outer casing of pies became closer to the outside surface of bread, and colonial women started using round pans to cut corners and stretch the ingredients, leading to shallow pies being born. By the 1700s, pies weren't just about survival anymore, it became comfort. Pioneer women often served pies with every meal, cementing this pastry as a unique form of American culture. Okay, let's see how she's doing. Holy shit, she's huge! Oh my god, she's huge! She's huge! That's crazy. Also would like to note for the record, my bread has no alum in it. It has a lot of sugar and butter, but no alum. So hopefully no children will die while they eat this bread. Aw, I'm deflating it. That honestly kind of makes me sad. They're quite sticky. I feel like mine should not be this sticky, but this is where we're at. I just cannot imagine doing this every day. Imagine being 10 years old and expected to do this every single day. That was a kitchen maid's life. During my research on 19th century kitchen maids, I honestly got really confused on who was actually doing what. Granted, my knowledge is based on Miss Patmore and Daisy from Downton Abbey, but that's besides the point. So to make sure we're all on the same page, let's get our terminology straight.
At the top of the hierarchy, there are master cooks. In the grandest of houses were French cooks, or what we would now say, chefs. They were always male. They might be French, but they were at the very least trained in French cooking.
This would be like a White House chef or Michelin star restaurant.
Next we have professed cooks. That is, cooks who, quote, professed or declared that they had learned fine cooking by apprenticeship, usually spending several years as a kitchen maid. For reference, this would be Mrs. Patmore. The cook is in sole charge of the kitchen and her own servants. Part of the cook's role involved talking daily to the mistress of the house to discuss the menu. The cook held the position of great trust within the family, as the family's health, money, and reputation as good hosts were in her hands.
The cook's hours would have been long, but not as long as the kitchen maids.
Which leads us to kitchen maids. They would be responsible for washing up and food preparation, like peeling vegetables and preparing raw meat, often having to gut and skin it. They would also prepare the daily supply of cooking salt by rubbing a block of salt through a sieve,
which was often made very painful due to their chapped and cracked hands from washing pots literally all day. I cannot imagine that hell. Oh my god. And these would be just children at 10 or 11 years old. Another fun fact, I guess, an early meaning of the word slut was a kitchen maid or drudge, a meaning that retained as late as the 18th century. In the 19th century, a colloquial version of kitchen maid was born, but I guess you could say I'm a slut. Here's something I actually got wrong. Families in the 1800s didn't bake every day. They actually typically baked a large quantity of bread and other goods once or twice a week, or at least enough to last until the next baking session. And when they did bake, oh, they baked.
An average working adult could eat just under a pound of bread daily, forming a major part of their diet due to the caloric needs of strenuous physical labor.
Think about the start of the Industrial Revolution and how much manpower was needed for all of that. Now, lucky me, while everything bakes, I have to go do dishes, like a real genuine kitchen maid. Yay. This is her. This is she. Chocolate chess pie. And now it's time for the rolls. Perfect timing. All right, let's see these puppies. Beautiful. Are they done enough, you think? They really should be good. Although the recipes and the methods that we use to bake have changed throughout centuries, the heart of it remains the same. Bread is still a key staple in pantries, and pies have been and will continue to be the perfect dessert for large gatherings. But it does make me wonder, did people and kitchen maids actually enjoy this? Like, Did they go into it being like, you know what, I do kind of like to bake, let me go into this career? Or if it purely was something they just fell into, and now here we are 50 years later and you're still cooking in your master's, is it master? I don't even know. Anyway, the point being, I wonder if you find yourself 50 years later and you're like in the same house, like at Downton Abbey, and you're like, all right, this is what I do. This is what we have accomplished today. Thank you for joining me on this historical journey. If you like baking and history and aesthetics and whatever, you know what to do. Subscribe and help me chase my dream of doing this for a living. Thanks. Mikas, you want to say hi since you're over here? Thanks. Love you. Bye.